There are specific moments in life that only happen to Sigma males. Not because they actively seek them out, not because they're deliberately trying to be different, but because their unique psychological makeup creates situations that simply don't occur for other personality types. These moments are unmistakable markers of a distinct way of experiencing reality. If you've experienced all 10 of these moments, you're not just independent or introverted, you possess the specific internal architecture of a Sigma male. And if you haven't experienced them, you're something else entirely. This isn't a judgment, it's simply recognition of fundamental differences in how people process their existence. Understanding binary psychological markers. Most personality traits exist on spectrums. You can be somewhat introverted, fairly independent, or pretty analytical. There's range, variation, and degrees of expression. But there are certain experiences that function as binary markers, absolute indicators that work like switches rather than dimmers. Either these moments have happened to you, or they haven't. Either you recognize them immediately from direct personal experience, or they sound completely foreign, like descriptions of experiences that belong to someone else's life entirely. These 10 moments are exactly like that. They're not things that happen to everyone occasionally, with varying intensity or frequency. They're experiences that only occur when you possess the specific psychological makeup of a Sigma male. The internal processing system that defines this personality type creates the precise conditions that make these moments possible, even inevitable. Other personality types can read these descriptions and understand intellectually what's being discussed. They can comprehend the concepts, follow the logic, and acknowledge that such experiences might exist, but they won't recognize them from personal experience. They've never actually lived these moments because their psychology doesn't create the conditions that make them possible in the first place. Sigma males reading this will do something different entirely. They won't just understand these moments, they'll recognize every single one from direct personal experience. These descriptions will feel like someone documenting private patterns they thought were unique to themselves. 1. Realizing you're more comfortable after someone leaves. The first moment is the profound realization that you're genuinely more comfortable after someone leaves than you were while they were present, even when that someone is a person you actually like and value. This happens during or immediately after social interaction. You're spending time with someone, a friend, a family member, a romantic partner, someone you genuinely care about and enjoy being around. The interaction itself is fine, even pleasant. There's nothing wrong with it. You're not uncomfortable in an obvious way. You're not counting the minutes until you can leave. The time together is perfectly adequate. Then they leave, and you feel this unmistakable wave of relief and increased comfort wash over you. Not because the interaction was secretly bad, not because you were hiding discomfort the entire time, not because you dislike the person, simply because being alone is fundamentally more comfortable than being with anyone, including people you genuinely like and value. The moment of realization comes when you recognize this as a consistent pattern rather than an occasional occurrence. Every single time someone leaves, even someone you care about deeply, you feel more comfortable. Solitude isn't just a recharge state or a break from social demands. It's genuinely your baseline comfort state, and any presence, no matter how welcome, no matter how valued, represents a deviation from that baseline. This realization is jarring because it contradicts everything you're supposed to feel according to social programming. You're supposed to miss people when they leave. You're supposed to feel less complete in their absence. You're supposed to want them to stay longer, to extend the visit, to maintain the connection. Instead, you feel more settled, more yourself, more comfortable, and you realize this is always true, without exception, even with people you genuinely care about and would protect without hesitation. Most people don't experience this specific pattern. Introverts need to recharge after social interaction. That's well documented and widely understood. But they don't feel more comfortable when people leave.
They feel relieved from exhaustion. There's a crucial difference. Relief from exhaustion is about recovering from depletion. Increased comfort is about returning to the state that feels most natural, most comfortable, more comfortable than any company, even genuinely good company with people you respect and care about. If you've had this exact realization, not just understanding it as a concept, but recognizing it as a consistent pattern in your own lived experience, you're probably a Sigma male. If you haven't experienced this specific pattern, you're not.
2. Watching others compete for something you could have but don't want. The second moment is watching other people compete intensely for something you could easily compete for, but genuinely don't want. This happens in professional settings, social situations, academic environments, anywhere there's competition for status, position, recognition, or resources. Everyone around you is competing hard, investing significant energy and emotion. They're fighting for the promotion, jockeying for social position, competing for attention or recognition, positioning themselves for advancement. The competition is intense, and everyone involved is deeply invested in the outcome. You're watching this entire performance unfold, and you're realizing several things simultaneously. You could compete. You have the capability, the skills, the intelligence, the strategic thinking. You'd probably win, or at least perform very well. But you genuinely don't want the thing they're all fighting over. The moment of recognition is understanding that your lack of participation in the competition isn't inability or fear of failure. It's not that you can't compete successfully. It's not that you're afraid of losing. It's not that you're intimidated by the other competitors. It's genuine lack of desire for the prize itself. They're fighting intensely over something that has no value to you whatsoever. The promotion they all want would mean more obligations you don't want. The social position they're competing for would require maintaining appearances you have no interest in maintaining. The recognition they desperately seek would bring attention you actively avoid. The resources they're fighting over would come with strings attached that make them worthless to you. Most people either compete or wish they could compete successfully. Alphas compete actively and aggressively, driven by the desire to win and dominate. Betas wish they could compete successfully and often feel inadequate about their inability to do so. Even people who don't compete directly usually want the prize enough to care about who wins the competition. Sigma males watch the entire competition and feel nothing. No desire for the prize, no wish to compete, no envy of winners or sympathy for losers. Just observation of people fighting over something that seems fundamentally pointless because the thing they're fighting for has no actual value. This moment often comes with confusion from others. They can see you're capable. They recognize you have the skills to compete successfully. They don't understand why you're not in the arena. They assume fear or laziness or that you're playing some complex long game they can't see yet. You're not. You just don't want what they want. The entire competition is meaningless because the prize is valueless to you. It's not that you couldn't obtain it, it's that obtaining it would be pointless effort for something you don't want. If you've experienced this moment, watching competition for something you could have but genuinely don't want, you're probably a Sigma male. If competitions usually interest you even when you don't participate, you're not. 3. Being called arrogant for simply being honest about your own capabilities. The third moment is being accused of arrogance when you're just stating accurate assessments of your own capabilities, simple, factual statements interpreted as performance of superiority. Someone asks what you can do, what you know, what you're capable of handling. You answer honestly and directly. You're good at this particular thing. You know this subject thoroughly. You can handle this specific challenge. Simple, factual statement delivered without performance or embellishment. Their response surprises you. Wow, you're really arrogant, aren't you? Or you think pretty highly of yourself. Or must be nice to be so confident. The moment of recognition is realizing they genuinely can't distinguish between someone who's accurately confident in actual capabilities and someone who's performing false superiority to cover insecurity. To them, these look identical. You weren't performing anything. You weren't bragging or showing off. You weren't trying to establish dominance or make anyone feel inferior.
You just answered a direct question honestly. Can you do this? Yes, I can do this. That's not arrogance. That's information. But to them, any statement of capability that isn't heavily couched in false modesty sounds like arrogance. They expect you to downplay, to hedge, to add disclaimers and qualifications. Well, I'm okay at it, I guess. I'm still learning. I'm probably not that good, really, but I can try. Actually claiming capability directly, yes, I can do that, sounds wrong to them. It violates social expectations about how you're supposed to present yourself. You're supposed to perform humility regardless of actual capability. Standing facts directly feels like arrogance to people trained in social performance.
The Sigma male moment is recognizing this as their problem, not yours. You're not going to perform false modesty to make them comfortable with your actual capabilities. If they interpret accurate self-assessment as arrogance, that reveals something about their relationship with honesty and capability, not about your character. Other personality types handle capability statements differently. Alphas perform confidence even beyond actual capabilities. They'll claim they can do things they can't because the performance of dominance matters more than accuracy. Betas downplay actual capabilities to avoid seeming arrogant or threatening. They'll deny being good at things they're demonstrably skilled at because social acceptance matters more than honesty. Both approaches are playing social games around capability statements. Both prioritize the social performance over accurate information. Sigma males just state facts. I can do this means I can do this. Not performing, not downplaying, just accurate. And if that sounds like arrogance to someone, that's their misinterpretation of honesty, not your performance of superiority. If you've been called arrogant for honest capability statements and recognized it as their misinterpretation rather than your performance, you're probably a Sigma male. 4. Having someone angry because you won't argue with them. The fourth moment is having someone become genuinely angry, not just frustrated, but actually angry because you refuse to argue with them. They're clearly trying to start an argument. They're saying provocative things, pushing buttons, creating conflict points, clearly wanting you to argue back. They're emotionally invested in getting you to engage in the conflict they're trying to create. You're not engaging, not because you're scared of confrontation, not because you can't argue effectively, not because you don't have responses to their provocations, simply because arguing with them serves no purpose and you won't do purposeless things. The moment comes when they get angry about your refusal to engage. Why won't you argue with me? You think you're too good to argue? You're being passive-aggressive by not responding. Your silence is a form of aggression. They're genuinely mad that you won't give them the argument they want. And you realize their anger about your non-engagement reveals they needed the argument for some psychological reason you don't share. They needed to fight. They needed the emotional release. They needed to prove something through conflict. They needed the engagement itself, regardless of outcome. Your calm refusal denies them what they need, and they can't handle it. Most people either argue when provoked or avoid conflict out of fear. Alphas argue to dominate and establish hierarchy. Betas avoid conflict to prevent negative consequences. Both are emotionally engaged with the question of whether to argue. Sigma males just decline to participate. Not emotionally, not with effort or internal struggle, just this serves no purpose, so no. The refusal isn't emotional, it's practical. It's the same energy as declining an invitation to an event you don't want to attend. This makes certain people absolutely furious. They were geared up for confrontation. They invested emotional energy in starting the fight. They need the engagement to satisfy whatever psychological need is driving them. Your calm, practical refusal denies them what they need, and the denial itself becomes the source of their anger. The Sigma male moment is recognizing their anger about your non-engagement as their problem, not yours. You're not required to argue just because they want to. You're not obligated to provide them with the conflict they need. Their anger at your boundaries reveals their issue, not your failure. If you've had someone become angry because you wouldn't argue with them and recognize their anger as unreasonable, as their need rather than your obligation,
you're probably a Sigma male.
5. Being invisible in groups, then surprising people with competence. The 5th moment is being completely unnoticed in group settings, then genuinely shocking people when your competence becomes unavoidably visible. You're in a group situation, a meeting, a class, a social gathering, any setting with multiple people. You're not participating much, not drawing attention to yourself, not broadcasting involvement. You're just present but quiet. Everyone assumes certain things about you based on your silence and lack of visible participation. They assume you're not contributing because you can't, or you're disengaged and don't care, or you don't know anything relevant, or you're just not capable. You're invisible and dismissed as irrelevant to whatever the group is doing. Then something happens that requires actual competence. A problem needs solving, a question needs answering, a task needs to be done that requires real skill or knowledge. You handle it easily, expertly, demonstrating a capability that nobody in the room knew you possessed. The moment is seeing the genuine shock on people's faces. They had no idea you were capable. They completely missed that you were actually the most competent person in the room the entire time because you weren't broadcasting it. This happens repeatedly throughout your life. Being underestimated, being invisible, then surprising people with a capability they didn't know existed. It's a consistent pattern across different contexts and groups. Most people don't experience this pattern. Alphas broadcast competence constantly, so nobody is surprised when they demonstrate it. Everyone already knew or assumed they were capable. Betas are visible in groups, even if not dominant. Ordinary people are noticed at approximately their actual level. Sigma males are invisible until competence becomes unavoidable. Then they shock people who completely underestimated them based on their silence and lack of performance. The moment of recognition is seeing this as a consistent pattern rather than an occasional occurrence, and realizing you actually prefer it this way. Being underestimated is strategically advantageous. Being invisible reduces social demands and expectations. Only demonstrating competence when necessary is efficient. Why constantly broadcast capability when you can just deploy it when it's actually needed? If this has happened to you repeatedly throughout your life and you recognized it as a pattern you don't mind or actively prefer, you're probably a Sigma male. Six, losing interest in someone the moment they tried too hard to impress you. The 6th moment is feeling your interest in someone drops to absolute zero the instant they start trying to impress you. You're talking to someone, could be a potential romantic interest, could be a potential friend, could be a professional connection. The initial interaction is fine, natural, and interesting. There's potential there. Then something shifts. They suddenly move into impression mode. They start trying to demonstrate their value, showing off knowledge, telling impressive stories about themselves, clearly trying to make you think highly of them. The performance becomes obvious. Your interest dies completely, not gradually, not slowly over time, instantly. The second they start performing to impress you, whatever interest existed vanishes entirely. This isn't about them being unimpressive. It's not that their accomplishments aren't real or their stories aren't interesting. It's that the performance itself is fundamentally repellent. The trying is what kills interest, not the failure to impress. The Sigma male moment is recognizing this as an absolute pattern. Every single time someone tries to impress you, interest dies. Every time, without exception. The harder they try, the faster interest disappears completely. Most people respond positively to impression attempts, at least somewhat. Alphas respect the competitive display. Betas appreciate the effort and attention. Even when impression attempts fail or seem awkward, The trying itself doesn't kill interest for most people. Sigma males find impression attempts fundamentally unattractive at a deep psychological level. The performance reveals a need for external validation. Neediness for validation is deeply unappealing. The moment it becomes visible, interest dies. Someone who's genuinely confident and capable doesn't need to perform those qualities. They simply exist with them. The performance reveals the need to be seen as impressive, and that need itself is what's unattractive. If you've experienced this moment repeatedly, interest dying instantly when someone tries to impress you, and recognized it as an automatic, unavoidable pattern, you're probably a Sigma male.
7. Preferring honest criticism over empty praise. The 7th moment is the realization that you genuinely prefer honest criticism over praise, even when the criticism is harsh. Someone gives you genuine critical feedback. They point out real flaws in your work or thinking. They identify actual problems. They tell you specifically what's wrong. The criticism is honest, accurate, and potentially harsh. It might even sting. Your response is gratitude and appreciation. This is useful information. This helps you improve. This identifies blind spots you couldn't see yourself. This is genuinely valuable. Someone else gives you praise. They tell you you're great. Everything you did was perfect. There's nothing to improve. You're wonderful. The validation is enthusiastic and seemingly sincere. Your response is nothing, or worse, annoyance. The praise is useless. It doesn't help you improve. It might not even be accurate. It's just empty validation that provides no useful information. The moment of recognition is realizing you consistently value criticism over praise, not because you hate yourself or have low self-esteem, but because criticism contains useful information, and praise usually doesn't. Criticism tells you what to improve. It identifies weaknesses. It shows you where your thinking is flawed or your skills are inadequate. Even harsh criticism provides a map for development. Praise tells you nothing useful. At best, it confirms you did something right, but usually doesn't specify what or why. At worst, it's empty social performance that bears no relationship to your actual performance. Most people strongly prefer praise to criticism. Alphas want validation of their dominance. Betas want social approval and acceptance. Everyone wants to hear they're doing well, that they're good, that people approve of them. Sigma males want accurate information. Praise rarely provides it. Criticism often does. Therefore, criticism is more valuable, even when it's uncomfortable to hear. This preference genuinely confuses people. They give you praise, expecting appreciation and gratitude. You're indifferent or dismissive. They give you criticism, expecting defensiveness or hurt feelings. You're grateful and engaged. The pattern is completely backwards from normal social expectations. And you recognize this pattern in yourself, clearly. Criticism draws you in, praise pushes you away. If you've had this exact experience and recognize this preference as consistent and genuine, you're probably a Sigma male. 8. Feeling relief when plans get canceled. The 8th moment is feeling genuine relief and happiness when plans get canceled, even plans you were supposedly looking forward to. You made plans. You agreed to attend something. Maybe it was even something you thought you'd enjoy. Dinner with friends, a social event, an outing you anticipated positively. The plan is set on your calendar. It's happening. Then it gets canceled. The other person cancels. The event gets called off. Something prevents the plan from happening. Your immediate, automatic reaction is relief, happiness even, not disappointment, not frustration. Relief that you don't have to go. The moment of recognition is understanding that this happens every single time. Plans get canceled, you feel relief. Even plans you thought you wanted, even things you agreed to that seemed appealing. Cancellation always feels better than attendance would have felt.
Most people feel at least some disappointment when plans cancel. They wanted to do the thing. They were looking forward to it. Cancellation represents a loss of something they desired. Even introverts who need alone time usually feel mild disappointment mixed with their relief. Sigma males feel pure relief, every time, without exception. The obligation is gone, the energy expenditure is canceled, the social performance is unnecessary. You get to stay home instead, and that's always better. This reveals something important about your relationship with plants. You don't actually want to do most things you agree to do. You agree because it seems like you should, because people expect it, because it's socially appropriate. But you'd prefer if they simply didn't happen. The pattern recognition moment is realizing you should probably stop making plans you don't want to keep because you never actually want to follow through. The planning itself is social performance rather than genuine desire. If you've experienced this pattern, relief every time plans cancel, you're probably a Sigma male.
9. Being told you're different your entire life without understanding how. The 9th moment is the realization that you've been told you're different or unique your entire life, but never understood what people meant until recently. From childhood through adulthood, across different contexts in relationships, people have consistently told you some version of "you're different" or "you're not like other people." Teachers said it, parents said it, friends said it, romantic partners said it, co-workers said it. Everyone at some point makes some observation about how you're fundamentally different from other people they know. You never understood what they meant. You feel completely normal to yourself. You're just being yourself, doing what makes sense to you, operating according to your own logic. What's different? You couldn't see it because from inside your own experience, you're the baseline of normal. The moment of recognition is realizing the difference isn't in what you do specifically, it's in how you fundamentally process reality. Your internal experience, how you think, what you value, what motivates you, what makes sense to you, is genuinely different from most people's internal experience. But you couldn't see that from inside your own head. Everyone's internal experience feels normal to themselves. You had no comparison point that would make your difference visible to you. What people were seeing and commenting on was the external manifestation of that internal difference. You don't seek the validation they seek. You don't value what they value. You don't respond to incentives that work on them. You operate according to different principles. Your entire motivation structure is different. Most people don't get told they're fundamentally different their entire life. They get told they're good at certain things or bad at others. They get told they're like this relative or that personality type, but not consistently from multiple sources across decades that they're fundamentally different in some essential way. Sigma males hear "you're different" constantly throughout their entire life because they genuinely are operating from different psychological architecture. But from inside their own experience, they feel normal. They're just being themselves. Everyone else seems strange to them, not the reverse. The recognition moment is understanding that what feels completely normal to you is actually unusual, that your internal processing creates external behaviors and choices that register as fundamentally different to others who are operating from more common psychological patterns. If you've been told you're different your whole life and only recently understood what people actually meant, you're probably a Sigma male. 10. Choosing solitude over mediocre company without hesitation. The 10th moment is facing a choice between being alone or being with people who are fine but not particularly interesting, and choosing to be alone every single time without hesitation or regret. This choice comes up constantly throughout life. Join the group for drinks after work. Attend the social event. Hang out with people who are pleasant enough. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not bad people. They're not unpleasant. Just not particularly interesting or valuable to you. Most people choose the company. Even mediocre company is better than solitude. Even boring people are better than solitude. The social interaction itself has value, regardless of the quality of the people involved. You choose to be alone every single time, without hesitation, without regret, without wishing there were a better option. Being alone is genuinely, consistently preferable to being with people who aren't excellent. The moment of recognition is understanding this isn't you being picky or antisocial. This is accurate calculation that solitude provides more value than mediocre company. When you're alone, you can do things that genuinely interest you. You can learn, build, think, create, develop skills, pursue interests. The time has actual value. It's productive or restful according to your own choice. With mediocre company, you're spending time on interaction that provides minimal value. The company isn't interesting enough, valuable enough, or enriching enough to justify the time cost. You're trading hours of your finite life for interaction that gives you essentially nothing in return. So you choose to be alone. Not reluctantly, not while wishing you had better options, just choosing the option that provides more value, which is consistently solitude over mediocre company. Most people can't do this consistently. They choose mediocre company over being alone, because being alone feels worse to them. The mediocre interaction, despite providing little value, still feels better than solitude. Sigma males consistently choose solitude because the bar for company being worth the time investment is very high. Most people don't clear that bar, so the choice is usually to be alone. If you've made this choice repeatedly throughout your life and recognized it as a consistent preference rather than reluctant settling, you're probably a Sigma male. Final recognition. These 10 moments create a specific psychological profile. If you've experienced all of them, you're not just understanding these concepts. You're recognizing familiar patterns from your own lived experience that you may have thought were unique to you. If you've experienced most, but not all, that clarifies where Sigma traits exist in your personality without the complete pattern. And if you've experienced none of these, you now understand why Sigma males can seem confusing or contradictory. They're literally having different experiences than you are, a different internal reality creating different external moments. Understanding these patterns provides clarity about how you naturally move through the world and why certain aspects of social interaction feel foreign or pointless, while others find them essential. These aren't better or worse patterns. They're simply different, creating a distinct way of experiencing life that either matches your reality or doesn't.